So U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has now wrapped up his two-day visit to South Korea yesterday after meeting President Lee Jae-myung and Seoul's defense chief Ahn Gyu Back. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Kim Dong-soo, professor at the Division of International and Area Studies at Pukyong National University. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So now that U.S. President Donald Trump has, authorized South Korea to have a nuclear-powered submarine, the U.S. Defense Secretary has promised full support for the program. What does this mean for South Korea's security? And some say it's impossible to build this in the United States. What's your take on this assessment?
The statement by Pete Hegseth that the U.S. fully supports Republic of Korea's move to acquire nuclear-powered submarine signals a significant shift for Korean defense policy. Indeed, only a tiny group of countries operate nuclear-powered submarines: US, UK, France, Russia, China, and India. Australia is on track under AUKUS, but not yet operational. So South Korea is becoming seventh or eighth. It means that South Korea possesses a kind of elite strategic capability status. Nuclear-powered submarines stay submerged for months. They are much quieter, harder to detect. They enable long-range missions into deep Pacific and Indian Oceans. Therefore, South Korea can shift for peninsular defense to blue water, long-range power projection. They can represent South Korea's top-tier military technology, and it raises both the strategic opportunities and practical complications. In a word, the authorization is a kind of game changer in South Korea's naval and strategic posture. Also, it was announced that the submarines will be built at the U.S. shipyard, specifically cited as the Hanwha Pili shipyard in Philadelphia. The problem is that it is fundamentally a commercial shipbuilding yard, not a dedicated nuclear submarine yard. So converting it for nuclear-powered submarines would be too expensive and technically challenging. Therefore, I believe that the original plan is likely to be changed to some extent as it is being executed.
I see. And another thing that Hegseth also discussed here in South Korea was the issue of transferring wartime operational control. He discussed that while he was meeting with President Lee Jae-myung. The president hopes to sort this out before the end of his 5-year term. How do you think this issue will play out in the future?
The U.S. and South Korea reaffirmed their commitment to the conditions-based OPCON transition. They agreed to continue evaluation of whether South Korea meets the required command and control and defense readiness conditions. They emphasized alliance deterrence must not weaken during the transition. Washington highlighted that the process must remain conditions-based, not political calendar-based. In a word, the SCM reaffirmed the goal, but produced no tangible progress. OPCON transfer remains slow, cautious, and firmly condition-based, despite Seoul's national and political urgency.
Right. And Professor Kim, as to whether the U.S. military forces could be used against China in the Taiwan Strait, Hegseth stressed the importance of flexibility. What are your thoughts on this?
Hegseth's emphasis on flexibility regarding the use of U.S. forces Korea in a Taiwan contingency has huge implications. In U.S. strategic language, flexibility equals redeployability, which means that while USFK's primary mission remains deterrence on the Korean Peninsula, Washington wants the option to use the U.S. forces based in Korea to respond elsewhere in the region if necessary, most notably in a Taiwan Strait crisis. his remark is a reflection of U.S. perception that USFK is part of a regional U.S. posture, not a Korea-only force. It also signals that the U.S. wants South Korea to contribute more to the defense against North Korea and the regional stability.
I see. That sounds pretty concerning. We'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Professor Kim, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.